All right, looks like the president's fixing to speak right here momentarily. This is pertaining to a shakedown that happened in Venezuela.
Nobel Peace Prize winner and opposition leader Maria Corina Machado saying in a statement that she believes Venezuelans should now enforce the mandate they got in the elections, which they say they won legitimately recently, and indeed that the winner of that, Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia, should become the legitimate president of Venezuela, and that the armed forces, importantly, should indeed back him. Now that's key because she is essentially, if you paraphrase here, calling for a popular uprising to continue or finish the job of removing the Maduro regime from power. Remember, Maduro's departure from the country does not necessarily mean that those below him relinquish the grip on power, and President Trump has been clear that they're continuing to discuss exactly what indeed happens next, that indeed he said the future will be bad for those who remain loyal to Maduro. But across the region, where clearly this Trump White House is trying to exercise greater power in the Western Hemisphere, there is a mixed reaction. Predictable Trump allies like Argentina's Javier Milei saying that this was freedom advances, long live freedom, damn it. Ecuador's Daniel Noboa saying that this was the time is now coming for all the narco-Chavista criminals and that their structure will completely collapse across the entire continent. Though Mexico's leader more critical, Colombia's president starkly critical, China obviously an ally of Venezuela to a limited extent, talking about they are being deeply shocked and strongly condemning the US's blatant use of force here, and indeed Brazil as well, talking about a dangerous precedent for the entire international community. So a shock, I think, across Southern America to see this stalwart, frankly, of authoritarian power in the region suddenly vanish, and that announcement of his departure appear in a 74.
Known for his prison escapes and faced drug trafficking charges. He was convicted in Chicago for these crimes.
See, whenever I went to Butner, North Carolina, not Butner, whenever I went to MCC in downtown Chicago, being studied in 2009, this guy was actually in the same building down in the boot. They call it down in the boot, where I was at. That was basically worldwide known kingpin, a drug kingpin, that I'm so glad that they put him away. I don't know, let me see. Boy, there's a bunch of names right here you can look at right here that's on public file. Anyways, let's go back to what they're talking about here pertaining to getting this Machado guy here out of the way, that tried to come in power illegitimately and was known of selling all kinds of illegal guns and explosives and everything else. 2 thumbs up to the administration that went after him, and it should send out a good signal to everybody else that if they think that they're going to do this and get away with it towards contaminating and poisoning our great nation over here, they got another thing coming. At least we got a president that's got the backbone of standing up and doing the proper and right things. Please, let's listen to what's going to be
an address to the
here.
nation any moment in Palm Beach. Let's send it back to you, Wolf, as we are awaiting everyone's.
And that's just some of the things that we know about. There ain't no telling what we don't know about pertaining to his guilt, that in which what they've been involved in towards railroading their own people and doing things illegitimate. They was talking this morning about the courts being held in New York. Well, you know, if you can hold courts in Chicago, federal courts in Chicago, why can't you hold federal courts in New York? Sure you can. Because the FBI was in on that shakedown pertaining to the military. They went in there and got him. Confiscated him and his wife. Took him out. Which is a good thing. Progress. Mission accomplished.
Deep insight into Maduro's pattern of life, which made it possible to snatch him so easily when the time came. All of this, again, just showing how long this has really been an operation that they were laying the groundwork for. Wolf, that this was going, of course, back to the summer. The other thing that I wanted to make clear here as well is that, this was an FBI team that really led a lot of these efforts that went in and actually helped capture Maduro and his family. And we're going to see them apparently in court potentially as early as next week. We're still waiting to hear on the next steps on that. But I think if you look at what the CIA has done, what the intelligence has done, all that also made possible by what the president did earlier this year in essentially giving broad authorities and new capabilities to the CIA to operate with these covert actions, both inside Venezuela and Latin America more broadly.
I'm sure that the Pentagon officials, and you're a former deputy Pentagon press secretary, will be asked if this was legal from the U.S. Point of view, an act of war. In effect, there was no legislation passed in Congress. What's the reaction?
Well, you'll remember, just a month ago, I think it was, when Secretary Rubio, Hegseth, I think Ratcliffe all went up to the Hill and briefed members of Congress. I think it was Lindsey Graham that said, there's no intention for regime change, and if they want to do something like that, they'd have to seek congressional approval for it to be legal. I think, and I hope, what you're going to see from the president is what are the legal ramifications and what were they operating under. I think you're going to see some justification from this administration, but I think Congress has a lot of questions on the use of...
They was operating under the safety and the survival of the American people. And it not a war, an actual physical confrontation war. It's more of a shakedown coming from our federal authorities here in the United States. Once they got proof of somebody doing stuff like this, they need to go after them. I don't care what country that they're in. Snatch them up, bring them here, have a trial, have a hearing, then a trial, and put them in jail. Give them what they deserve. Now, if they really wanted to do things illegal, they'd have just went in there and just slaughtered everybody. They didn't do that.
And take these two into custody. That's pretty dramatic.
It's dramatic, and it's funny that President Trump was saying it's like watching TV. It does seem so cinematic in this moment, and I think under another administration, I think you'd see the president come out and talk about this, and then you see the Secretary of Defense come out and explain the operation. And as you know, when we've talked about this, we don't have a typical press corps that's in the Pentagon right now. We don't have a typical press Department of Defense secretary that would brief the press right now. But some of the things that I want to know are what are the airframes that were used? Were there injuries? Donald Trump mentioned that some of the operators were injured. So, I have a lot of outstanding questions, and I'm sure so do the American public and Congress. And we're not getting all those answers that we would usually get.
The president will be...
There's always going to be collateral damage whenever something like this occurs. You have to raise a stiff arm to these stiff, illegal people, just like that Mexican guy, escape artist that was held in the same jail that whenever they would transport him from that facility over to the courthouse, they would use dummy type scenarios and thinking that he was going out the back door, but the whole time he was going out the front or vice versa. Plus, they had SWAT on top of the buildings to make sure that nobody intervened. I mean, these people are very serious about this, and it needs to put a strong, strong message out there to the rest of the world that we are not going to put up with allowing for fentanyl and all these other self-inflicting drugs up into our streets illegally. Should not have never have gotten this far out of control to begin with. I remember whenever I think it was the Bushes that said that they was going to war against the drug cartels. Huh. I tend to wonder about that.
The one made famous by that movie Black Hawk Down. It was also involved in the operation that ultimately led to the capture of Panamanian leader Noriega, and that case and that operation is something Trump administration officials are pointing to as similar and with the setting a precedent for this mission that targeted Maduro as well. So a lot of planning, a lot of conversations leading up to this point, but ultimately what we heard early on, months ago, about the ultimate goal here, this ultimate goal of removing Maduro from power, does seem to have come to fruition.
Yeah, certainly does. He's aboard the USS Iwo Jima right now, U.S. Navy battleship, making their way towards New York, where he will, in the coming days, wind up before a federal judge on these conspiracy charges, narco-terrorism conspiracy charges that have now been filed against him and his wife, Celia Flores. I want to go to our contributor, Stefano Pozzebon, right now. Stefano, I know you've reported extensively on Maduro from Venezuela over the years. Bring our viewers up to speed on how he actually ruled the country, and what do you anticipate the likely reaction inside Venezuela will be to his capture and his being headed towards this New York court?
Yes, indeed, Wolf. Well, you can question the legality of the operation, but you cannot feel for the millions of Venezuelans who, mostly around the world, are celebrating for the capture, the detention of a person who was effectively an authoritarian leader who ruled this country with an iron fist for pretty much the last 13 years, Wolf. I'm saying out of the country because, in fact, inside the country, inside Venezuela, not much has changed. The government structure is still in place. The vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, is operating as acting head of state, and they are demanding through the United Nations for an immediate return of Nicolas Maduro to his country, of course rejecting and denying all of these allegations of drug trafficking. And that's why I think that you've seen that not many people are out in the streets of Caracas, perhaps celebrating or taking to the streets, because there is a climate of tension and fear, as always it happens in an authoritarian, anti-democratic country. But Maduro, make no mistake, is a person that has been under scrutiny for his records on human rights for over 10 years. We have reports of extrajudicial killings and unprecedented violence in repressing the street protest in both 2014, 2017, 2019 to try
crimes against humanity.
Squarely an election, and yet refused to concede his loss and simply waltzed his way into power, simply shrugged off the claims from the opposition that was sustained by the publication on voting ballot acts that the opposition had actually won that election in 2024, and Maduro simply pretended that nothing happened and he won once again. So you can definitely understand the concern that this type of unprecedented action from the United States is raising around the world. The United Nations have, for example, issued a statement saying that there are concerning implications around the action from Washington in taking a sitting head of state and removing it from power and taking it into a foreign country in handcuffs. However, we're still talking about one of the most anti-democratic and most brutal and strongmen, at least in the Americas, that is now out of power. What happens now in Venezuela, however, is a different thing, because as my colleagues were correctly pointing out, here the objective was to remove Maduro from power, not to create a regime change in Venezuela. The opposition has issued a statement calling for their candidate in the 2024 election to be installed into power. That would be a long-time diplomat called Edmundo González Urrutia, who is currently in Madrid, Spain, and would be ready to pick up power as a transition president, perhaps towards a new democratic Venezuela. But it is far from happening. Right now, the power remains pretty much in the hands, and strongly in the hands, of the Venezuelan military that up until today was loyal to Nicolas Maduro, and by the look of it today are standing by Maduro's vice president, Delcy Rodriguez. There will be definitely some power struggle and some moves in the power circuits in Caracas, especially with the different members of his government realigning themselves around whoever will pick up the baton from Maduro himself. But the government doesn't appear to be on the brink of falling down. And nor, for example, the hundreds of political prisoners, including at least 5 US citizens that have been detained in recent weeks in Venezuela. used as a tactic normally to negotiate as pawns in negotiations with the US. That is one of the other tactics that Maduro has employed.
Just like Donald Trump said, they was literally running the worst of the worst out of their country. Those that they didn't like or didn't go along with, or those that had mental problems, those that was some of your most vicious people, driving them out, driving them through old Mexico. That way they would come over here and contaminate our streets and make our culture fall apart that much quicker and that much more. This is being done not unintentionally, but intentionally. And the American people has not yet gotten wise to the fact that what Donald Trump talks about pertaining to these barbarians that's doing this needs to be put to shame. I give them 2 thumbs up. I think it was a successful mission myself. Anybody that could go in there and do what they done without basically killing the people that they was going after. I mean, those guys that went in there after those people, that wasn't your weekend warriors. Those was well-trained, trained men and women that was involved in that shakedown. I'm glad that it turned out as good as what it did. But it should leave a very, very powerful statement to all the other ones out there that think that they're going to do this and get away with it, because we will hunt you down and we will find you and we will try you and you will be held in the principles of the fullest extent of the law, our American laws.
We should have no love lost here with this regime.
And we'll see what happens next with this new regime. There's a vice president that's taking over, Delcy Rodriguez. We'll see how that unfolds as well.
Exactly.
Now that Maduro is on his way to a court in New York City where he's going to be charged with conspiracy, narco-terrorism conspiracy specifically. Elena, let me get back to what else you're hearing from the White House right now.
Yeah, look, I think one of the big things is going to be them laying out the legal justification for a lot of this, particularly because they had vowed multiple times, informally, I should say, I guess, but the president, as well as the White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, had kind of implicitly said that they were going to alert Congress before striking inside Venezuela. And you've seen a myriad of responses today from Republicans and Democrats alike on social media, many of them angered that they weren't briefed on this. We know that former Senator Marco Rubio, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, has been calling around to lawmakers today following this operation, alerting them to a lot of this. And what I've been told in my conversations with my sources, we've seen some of this posted online from what some of the lawmakers who have spoken with Rubio said, is that they are saying that it was the Article 2 under the Constitution that has provided the legal basis for the administration for this. But it's going to be very, I think, important to hear from the president. I'm sure we're going to see some other officials as well, potentially Rubio, maybe Defense Secretary Hegseth. We'll have to see who actually joins Trump at this press conference momentarily. But they're going to need to kind of explain themselves here. And if he doesn't do it in this press conference, it's definitely going to be something they need to explain after the fact. And I know a lot of lawmakers as well, just from the people I've been talking.
Walk softly and carry a big stick. This is the only way of being driven, provoked, that we're going to be able to regain any type of control on our streets and control pertaining to what's outlandishly out of control, pertaining to these horrible, horrible drug inducement overdoses that's killing innocent lives every day. I don't know how many lives are being killed, but it's horrible. And in some people's eyes, they're going to say, "Oh, well, we're the bad guy. We're the bad guy." No, we're not the bad guys. We're actually the good guys. We're having to use bad tactics on the bad people because this is the only way that we can stop them. Because we thought that we had allies in Mexico that would do the proper and right thing, but come to find out, they've been taken over by the cartel too as well. They've surrounded us, and now they're invading us. With their poison. They're contaminating us. They're killing us.
Thing to see here with Nicolas Maduro. One of the things that obviously these are criminal charges that are being filed against him, but he is the president of Venezuela, and he is likely to argue that he is entitled to be treated as that. And so that means that he's going to be treated, if he wins that fight, he will be treated as a prisoner of war. That gives him some additional legal rights inside the U.S. system. And so we'll see how he goes forward on this. But one of the things that our team has been learning, including Natasha Bertrand and some of our other team who've been reporting on this, is that they've been relying on this 1989 OLC opinion. This is an Office of Legal Counsel opinion from the Justice Department, which overruled an earlier opinion. Essentially, what the Justice Department said in this opinion is that the FBI has the jurisdiction, has the right, if ordered by the president, to carry out an arrest on foreign soil.
Exactly.
In contravention of international law, if the president says so. And so that's one of the things we anticipate that the president and the administration is going to explain, that they have the authority to send in the U.S. military to carry out this operation. The FBI, the hostage rescue team,
sent in the Navy
was part of
SEALs.
this operation.
They sent in some very, very highly
onto the Iwo Jima.
trained
Now
men and women
trying to move him to New York. The logistics of that are not that simple. Obviously, he's on a military ship. It's a little distance away from New York, so they have to figure out how to get him from there to New York. They're probably going to fly him to a U.S. base somewhere in the Caribbean and then transfer him. All of that is being done as we speak. Wolf, we expect that he could be in court. Elena, I think you've heard this as well, that he could be in court as soon as Monday morning. And then we'll see this process begin, where he's going to answer these charges related to narco trafficking that the U.S. says he's been participating in for decades.
The Southern District of New York has been filing these charges against it. I'm just curious, once he gets these charges against him, will he be out on bail? Will he be taken to a U.S. jail? What happens?
No, he will not be allowed to go free. I don't anticipate. Obviously, that's something that a judge will have to decide. I don't get to make that decision. But yeah, we expect that he is going to be held most likely at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. This is a high security federal prison, jail that where a lot of high profile people have been held. And that's where it's most likely he is going to be held. Alongside, by the way, some of the cartel members that have been brought there to New York in the last few years, in which the U.S. says Maduro has been actively helping, not only helping them bring drugs from South America through Mexico to the United States, but also helping them launder those proceeds over the last decades.
All right, we'll see what happens. A lot of drama will unfold, to be sure. Evan, thank you very, very much. We're going to get back to Aaron in New York. Aaron?
All right, Wolf. And as we're awaiting the president, as Wolf just said, the president's now about a half an hour late from the anticipated address in Mar-a-Lago, where we've been showing you the images. The press have been gathered in there now for well over a half an hour. And so, but we're awaiting the president. Now, he did just post something on his own.
Pete owns it.
Custody, and as we just take a look at what he's wearing, from the sunglasses, the thing around his neck, the water bottle, what he's wearing. Let's just keep this up. I want to bring in the New York Times White House and Chief National Correspondent David Sanger. David, this is an incredible moment. Obviously, you have been covering moments analogous to this for decades. But let's just look at this image that President Trump has just posted. And when we pull out, it's almost like as if it's a sweatshirt and some sort of a tied sweatpants hastily put together. What do you see in this image of Nicolas Maduro that President Trump has just posted?
Well, it is remarkable and sort of reminds you of the photographs of Saddam when he was first grabbed, Noriega in 1989 when he came out of Panama. Clearly, Maduro was not planning to spend his evening the way that he was. And you see him there in what looks like sweatpants and so forth, holding his water bottle, but
looks to me
also,
like a criminal.
His handcuffs on. I think this is going to raise all kinds of interesting issues. You just heard from Evan the legal pretext, and he has been under indictment since 2020. So I think the administration will lean heavily into enforcing that indictment and putting him in front of a judge. But the president has made clear in many different ways that this is about more than just drugs and Maduro. It is about access to oil. The president had a Truth Social on that where he demanded that the U.S. get restored rights that it had to that oil years ago. It's about regime change. If you go into the president's national security strategy, you see something called the Trump corollary that basically asserts that the United States has the right to go in and clean up governments that are causing disruption or a threat within the region. So it'd be interesting to see which one of these the president leans on.
And also, when we look at an image like this, and I think your perspective here of talking about Saddam Hussein, right, Noriega, when you look at an image like this, right, this is the first image. This now is an image that is going to stand for something. And of course, we do anticipate seeing Maduro and his wife, his son, as they call him, the prince, they're appearing in New York, right? We're going to see them in coming days, we expect, but we haven't seen him yet. So this is all there is for the world to look at. How does an image like this land with Xi Jinping, with Vladimir Putin, with, in autocracies and dictatorships?
Who cares? Who cares? We got to take care of our interests. We got to take care of the safety and the well-being of our people.
And it shows the ability of the United States to get through multiple layers of security and grab an authoritarian leader. So that's the downside for them. But I think the more they think about it, the more they may give thought to what the precedent enables them to do. I mean, if it turns out that the United States can get away with doing this, could President Putin attempt this with President Zelensky, who he has declared is a criminal? Could China's leaders do this with the president of Taiwan, which China has declared as a breakaway province? So I think on the one hand, it shows the huge reach of the American military.
Let me ask a $64,000 question. If we could pinpoint just exactly who masterminded and who developed COVID, the pandemic, does the people in America feel like that we do not have a right in going after that individual, or we do have a right in going after that individual? Because between 9/11 and COVID and some more incidences that's happened over here, it has actually turned our country totally upside down to the degree that now we're dealing with the problems that we're dealing with today.
Abnormal in and of itself, but we are almost 40 minutes past the time. What do you think could be happening in that time? Obviously Wolf's group has been discussing, and Elena's been reporting on possibly new information coming in or who's going to be present. But what do you think this 40-minute delay could mean?
Well, first, we don't know, but we have some guesses.
Well, them were some stupid questions. You know what? Our media, sometimes they can just really go way out in left field when it comes to common sense.
Here we go, David. We got the president. Let's listen in. I'll come back to you on the other side. President of the United States, Donald Trump.
This is big stuff. And we appreciate you being here. Late last night and early today, at my direction, the United States Armed Forces conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital of Venezuela. Overwhelming American military power, air, land, and sea, was used to launch a spectacular assault. And it was an assault like people have not seen since World War II. It was a force against a heavily fortified military fortress in the heart of Caracas to bring outlaw dictator Nicolas Maduro to justice. This was one of the most stunning, effective, and powerful displays of American military might and competence in American history. And if you think about it, we've done some other good ones, like the attack on Soleimani, the attack on al-Baghdadi, and the obliteration and decimation of the Iran nuclear sites just recently in an operation known as Midnight Hammer. All perfectly executed and done. No nation in the world could achieve what America achieved yesterday, or frankly, in just a short period of time. All Venezuelan military capacities were rendered powerless as the men and women of our military, working with U.S. law enforcement, successfully captured Maduro in the dead of night. It was dark. The lights of Caracas were largely turned off due to a certain expertise that we have. It was dark and it was deadly. But captured along with his wife, Celia Flores, both of whom now face American justice.
Good riddance.
Maduro and Flores have been indicted in the Southern District of New York, Jay Clayton, for their campaign of deadly narco-terrorism against the United States and its citizens. I want to thank the men and women of our military who achieved such an extraordinary success overnight.
Amen.
With breathtaking speed, power, precision, and competence. You rarely see anything like it. You've seen some raids in this country that didn't go so well. They were an embarrassment. If you look back to Afghanistan, or if you look back to the Jimmy Carter days, they were different days. We're a respected country again, like never before. These highly trained warriors, operating in collaboration with U.S. law enforcement, caught them in a very ready position. They were waiting for us. They knew we had many ships out in the sea, just sort of waiting. They knew we were coming. So they were in a ready, what's called a ready position. But they were completely overwhelmed and very quickly incapacitated. If you would have seen what I saw last night, you would have been very impressed. I'm not sure that you'll ever get to see it, but it was an incredible thing to see. Not a single American service member was killed, and not a single piece of American equipment was lost. We had many helicopters, many planes, many people involved in that fight. But think of that, not one piece of military equipment was lost, not one service member was, more importantly, killed. The United States military is the strongest and most fearsome military on the planet by far. With capabilities and skills our enemies can scarcely begin to imagine. We have the best equipment anywhere in the world. There's no equipment like what we have, and you see that even if you just look at the boats. You know, we've knocked out 97% of the drugs coming in by sea. 90%. Each boat kills on average 25,000 people.
Good God.
We knocked out 97%. And those drugs mostly come from place called Venezuela. We're going to run the country until such time
Our Colombia, our
as
police.
we can do a safe,
Our
proper,
Brazil.
and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in, and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years.
Right.
So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And it has to be judicious because that's what we're all about. We want peace, liberty, and justice for the great people of Venezuela. And that includes many from Venezuela that are now living in the United States
Right.
and want to go back to their country. It's their homeland. We can't take a chance that somebody else takes over Venezuela that doesn't have the good of the Venezuelan people in mind. We've had decades of that. We're not going to let that happen. We're there now, and what people don't understand, but they understand as I say this, we're there now, but we're going to stay until such time as the proper transition can take place. So we're going to stay until such time as we're going to run it, essentially, until such time as a proper transition can take place. As everyone knows, the oil business in Venezuela has been a bust, a total bust, for a long period of time. They were pumping almost nothing by comparison to what they could have been pumping and what could have taken place. We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country. And we are ready to stage a second and much larger attack if we need to do so. So we were prepared to do a second wave if we needed to do so. We actually assumed that a second wave would be necessary, but now it's probably not. The first wave, if you'd like to call it that, the first attack was so successful, we probably don't have to do a second, but we're prepared to do a second wave, a much bigger wave, actually. This was pinpoint, but we have a much bigger wave that probably won't have to do. This partnership of Venezuela with the United States of America, a country that everybody wants to be involved with because of what we were able to do and accomplish, will make the people of Venezuela rich, independent, and safe. And it will also make the many, many people from Venezuela that are living in the United States extremely happy. They suffered. They suffered. So much was taken from them. They're not going to suffer anymore. The illegitimate dictator Maduro was the kingpin of a vast criminal network responsible for trafficking colossal amounts of deadly and illicit drugs into the United States. As alleged in the indictment, he personally oversaw the vicious cartel known as Cartel de las Solas, which flooded our nation with lethal poison, responsible for the deaths of countless Americans, the many, many Americans. Hundreds of thousands over the years of Americans died because of him. Maduro and his wife will soon face the full might of American justice and stand trial on American soil. Right now, they're on a ship they'll be heading to, ultimately, New York. And then a decision will be made, I assume, between New York and Miami or Florida. But we have people where the overwhelming evidence of their crimes will be presented in a court of law. And I've seen it. I've seen what we have. It's both horrible and breathtaking that something like this could have been allowed to take place. For many years after his term as president of Venezuela expired, Maduro remained in power and waged a ceaseless campaign of violence, terror, and subversion against the United States of America, threatening not only our people, but the stability of the entire region. and you all saw it. In addition to trafficking gigantic amounts of illegal drugs that inflicted untold suffering and human destruction all over the country, all over in particular the United States, Maduro sent savage and murderous gangs, including the bloodthirsty prison gang Tren de Aragua, to terrorize American communities nationwide. And he did indeed. They were in Colorado. They took over apartment complexes. They cut the fingers off people if they called police. They were brutal. But they're not so brutal now. And I just have to congratulate our military, Pete, and everybody, and our National Guard, because the job that they've done, whether it's in Washington, D.C., where we have a totally safe city, where it was one of the most unsafe cities anywhere in the world, frankly, and now we have no crime in Washington, D.C. We haven't had a killing. We had the terrorist attack a few weeks ago. A little bit of a different kind of a threat, but we haven't had a killing in a long period of time, 6-7 months. We used to have two, on average, 2 a week in Washington, our capital. We don't have that anymore. The restaurants are opening. Everyone's happy. They're walking their daughters. They're walking their children, their wives. They walk to restaurants. Restaurants are opening all over Washington, D.C. So I want to thank the National Guard. I want to thank our military. And I want to thank law enforcement. Been amazing. And they should do it with more cities. We're doing it, as you know, and we're doing it in Memphis, Tennessee right now, and crime is down. We've just sort of started a few weeks ago, but crime is down now 77%.
Hallelujah.
And the governor of Louisiana called, great person, and he wanted us to help him, as you know, in a certain very nice part of Louisiana. And we have done that. And it was a rough section, and we have crime down. I understand it's down to almost nothing already after 2.5 weeks. New Orleans, it's down to almost nothing. And we've only been there for 2.5 weeks. Can't imagine why governors wouldn't want us to help. We also helped, as you know, in Chicago, and crime went down a little bit there. We did a very small help because we had no working ability with the governor. The governor was a disaster and the mayor was a disaster, but it knocked down crime. But we're pulling out of there. When they need us, we'll know. You'll know. You'll be writing about it. And likewise, Los Angeles, where we saved Los Angeles early on, where the head of the police department made a statement that if the federal government didn't come in, we would have lost Los Angeles. That's long after the fires. That's when they had the riots in Los Angeles. We did a great job. Got no credit for it whatsoever, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. We don't need the credit. But we'll be pulling out when they need us. They'll call, or we'll go back if we have to. We'll go back. But we did a great job in various cities. But the place that we're very proud of is Washington, D.C., because it's our nation's capital. We took it from being a crime-ridden mess to being one of the safest cities in the country. But the gangs that they sent raped, tortured, and murdered American women and children. They were in all of the cities I mentioned, Tren de Aragua, and they were sent by Maduro to terrorize our people, and now Maduro will never again be able to threaten an American citizen or anybody from Venezuela. There will no longer be threats. For years, I've highlighted the stories of those innocent Americans whose lives were so heartlessly robbed by this Venezuelan terrorist organization. Really one of the worst. One of the worst. They say the worst. Americans like 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungari from Houston. Beautiful Jocelyn Nungari. What happened to her? They, as you know, they kidnapped, assaulted, and murdered by Tren de Aragua animals. They murdered Jocelyn and left her dead under the bridge. There was a bridge that will never be the same to so many people after seeing what happened. As I've said many times, the Maduro regime emptied out their prisons, sent their worst and most violent monsters into the United States to steal American lives. And they came from mental institutions and insane asylums. They came from prisons and jails. The reason I say both, they sound similar. Actually, prisons a little bit more hostile, a little bit tougher. A mental institution isn't as tough as an insane asylum, but we got them both. They sent from their mental institutions, they sent from their jails, prisons. They were drug dealers, they were drug kingpins. They sent everybody bad into the United States. But no longer, and we have now a border where nobody gets through. In addition, Venezuela unilaterally seized and stole American oil, American assets, and American platforms, costing us billions and billions of dollars. They did this a while ago, but we never had a president that did anything about it. They took all of our property. It was our property. We built it. And we never had a president that decided to do anything about it. Instead, they fought wars that were 10,000 miles away. We built Venezuela oil industry with American talent, drive, and skill, and the socialist regime stole it from us during those previous administrations, and they stole it through force. This constituted one of the largest thefts of American property in the history of our country. Considered the largest theft of property in the history of our country. Massive oil infrastructure was taken like we were babies, and we didn't do anything about it. I would have done something about it. America will never allow foreign powers to rob our people or drive us back into and out of our own hemisphere. That's what they did. Furthermore, under the now deposed dictator Maduro, Venezuela was increasingly hosting foreign adversaries in our region and acquiring menacing offensive weapons that could threaten U.S. interests and lives. And they used those weapons last night. Potentially in league with the cartels operating along our border. All of these actions were in gross violation of the core principles of American foreign policy, dating back more than 2 centuries. And not anymore. All the way back, it dated to the Monroe Doctrines. And the Monroe Doctrine is a big deal. But we've superseded it by a lot. By a real lot. They now call it the Monroe Document. I don't know. It's Monroe Doctrine. We sort of forgot about it. It was very important, but we forgot about it. We don't forget about it anymore. Under our new national security strategy, American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again. Won't happen. So just in concluding, for decades, other administrations have neglected or even contributed to these growing security threats in the Western Hemisphere. Under the Trump administration, we are reasserting American power in a very powerful way in our home region. And our home region is very different than it was just a short while ago. The future will be, and we did this in my first term. We had great dominance in my first term, and we have far greater dominance right now. Everyone's coming back to us. The future will be determined by the ability to protect commerce and territory and resources that are core to national security.
Amen.
These are core to our national security.
Yes.
Just like tariffs are, they've made our country rich, and they've made our national security stronger than ever before. But these are the iron laws that have always determined global power. And we're going to keep it that way. We will secure our borders. We'll stop the terrorists. We will crash the cartels, and we will defend our citizens against all threats, foreign and domestic. Other presidents may have lacked the courage or whatever to defend America, but I will never allow terrorists and criminals to operate with impunity against the United States. This extremely successful operation should serve as warning to anyone who would threaten American sovereignty or endanger American lives. Very importantly, the embargo on all Venezuelan oil remains in full effect. The American Armada remains poised in position, and the United States retains all military options until United States demands have been fully met and fully satisfied. all political and military figures in Venezuela should understand what happened to Maduro can happen to them, and it will happen to them if they aren't just, fair, even to their people. The dictator and terrorist, Maduro, is finally gone in Venezuela. People are free. They're free again.
Amen.
It's been a long time for them, but they're free. America is a safer nation this morning. It's a prouder nation this morning because it didn't allow this horrible person and this country that was doing very bad things to us. It didn't allow it to happen. And the Western Hemisphere is right now a much safer place to be. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank General Raisin Kane. He's fantastic man. I've worked with a lot of generals. I worked with some I didn't like. I worked with some I didn't respect. I worked with some that just weren't good. But this guy is fantastic. I watched last night one of the most precise attacks on sovereignty. I mean, it was an attack for justice. And I'm very proud of him, and I'm very proud of our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, who I'm going to ask to say a few words. Thank you very much.
Can you explain how the U.S. will run Venezuela?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Finally, a commander-in-chief the world respects and the American people deserve. And as the president said, words can barely capture the bravery and the power and the precision of this historic operation. A massive joint military and law enforcement raid flawlessly executed by the greatest Americans our country has to offer. American warriors are second to none, the best in the world and the best of our country. What all of us witnessed last night was sheer guts and grit, gallantry and glory of the American warrior.
Hallelujah.
I'm simply humbled by such man. And I tip my hat to our chairman, Dan Raisin Kane, and all those Americans who stood watch last night. Our warriors are the elite of America, and again, President Trump has your back. No other country on planet Earth, and it's not even close, could pull this kind of operation off. And no other president has ever shown this kind of leadership, courage, and resolve. The most powerful combination the world has ever seen. As the president said, our adversaries remain on notice. America can project our will anywhere, anytime. The coordination, the stealth, the lethality, the precision, the very long arm of American justice, all on full display in the middle of the night. Nicolas Maduro had his chance, just like Iran had their chance, until they didn't and until he didn't. He effed around and he found out. President Trump is deadly serious about stopping the flow of gangs and violence to our country. Deadly serious about stopping the flow of drugs and poison to our people. Deadly serious about getting back the oil that was stolen from us. And deadly serious about reestablishing American deterrence and dominance in the Western Hemisphere. This is about the safety, security, freedom, and prosperity of the American people. This is America first. This is peace through strength. And the United States War Department is proud to help deliver it.
Yes.
Welcome to 2026. And under President Trump, America is back. I'd like to welcome now our Chairman Raisin Kane, to give a few more details about the operation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning. Last night, on the order of the President of the United States, and in support of a request from the Department of Justice, as the President said, the United States military conducted an apprehension mission in Caracas, Venezuela, to bring to justice two indicted persons, Nicolas and Cecilia Maduro. This operation, known as Operation Absolute Resolve, was discreet, precise, and conducted during the darkest hours of January 2nd, and was the culmination of months of planning and rehearsal, an operation that, frankly, only the United States military could undertake. What I'd like to do this morning is talk to you through some of the preparation and the details without compromising any of our tactics, techniques, and procedures. There is always a chance that will be tasked to do this type of mission again. Our interagency work began months ago and built on decades of experience of integrating complex air, ground, space, and maritime operations. While the past 2 decades have honed the skills of our special operations forces, this particular mission required every component of our joint force, with soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians working in unison with our intelligence agency partners and law enforcement teammates in an unprecedented operation. We leveraged our unmatched intelligence capabilities and our years of experience in hunting terrorists, and we could not have done this mission without the incredible work by various intelligence agencies, including the CIA, NSA, and NGA. We watched, we waited, we prepared, we remained patient and professional. This mission was meticulously planned, drawing lessons from decades of missions over the last many years, many missions over these last many years. This was an audacious operation that only the United States could do. It required the utmost of precision and integration within our joint force. And the word integration does not explain the sheer complexity of such a mission. An extraction so precise it involved more than 150 aircraft launching across the Western Hemisphere in close coordination, all coming together in time and place to layer effects for a single purpose: to get an interdiction force into downtown Caracas while maintaining the element of tactical surprise. Failure of one component of this well-oiled machine would have endangered the entire mission, and failure is never an option for America's joint force. Those in the air over Caracas last night were willing to give their lives for those on the ground and in the helicopters. Let me talk a little bit about the preparation. After months of work by our intelligence teammates to find Maduro and understand how he moved, where he lived, where he traveled, what he ate, what he wore, what were his pets. In early December, our force was set pending a series of aligned events. Key was choosing the right day to minimize the potential for civilian harm and maximize the element of surprise, and minimize the harm to the indicted personnel, so as the president said, they could be brought to justice. And as the president said earlier today, weather in Venezuela is always a factor this time of the year. And over the weeks through Christmas and New Year's, the men and women of the United States military sat ready, patiently waiting for the right triggers to be met and the president to order us into action. Last night, the weather broke just enough, clearing a path that only the most skilled aviators in the world could maneuver through. Ocean, mountain, low cloud ceilings. But when tasked with a mission, this organization does not quit. At 10:46 p.m. Eastern Time last night, the president ordered the United States military to move forward with this mission. He said to us, and we appreciated it, Mr. President, good luck and Godspeed. And those words were transmitted to the entire joint force. Over the course of the night, aircraft began launching from 20 different bases on land and sea across the Western Hemisphere. In total, more than 150 aircraft, bombers, fighters, intelligence, reconnaissance, surveillance, rotary wing were in the air last night. Thousands and thousands of hours of experience were airborne. Our youngest crew member was 20, and our oldest crew member was 49. And there's simply no match for American military might. As the night began, the helicopters took off with the extraction force, which included law enforcement officers, and began their flight into Venezuela at 100 feet above the water. As they approached Venezuelan shores, the United States began layering different effects provided by Spacecom, Cybercom, and other members of the interagency to create a pathway. Overhead, those forces were protected by aircraft from the United States Marines, the United States Navy, the United States Air Force, and the Air National Guard. The force included F-22s, F-35s, F-18s, EA-18s, E-2s, B-1 bombers, and other support aircraft, as well as numerous remotely piloted drones.
Wow.
As the force began to approach Caracas, the Joint Air Component began dismantling and disabling the air defense systems in Venezuela, employing weapons to ensure the safe passage of the helicopters into the target area. The goal of our air component was, and always will be to protect the helicopters and the ground force and get them to the target and get them home. As the force crossed the last point of high terrain where they'd been hiding in the clutter, we assessed that we had maintained totally the element of surprise. As the helicopter force ingressed towards the objective at low level, we arrived at Maduro's compound at 1:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 2:01 a.m. Caracas local time, and the apprehension force descended into Maduro's compound and moved with speed, precision, and discipline towards their objective, and isolated the area to ensure the safety and security of the ground force while apprehending the indicted persons. On arrival into the target area, the helicopters came under fire, and they replied with that fire with overwhelming force in self-defense. One of our aircraft was hit, but remained flyable, and as the president said earlier today, all of our aircraft came home, and that aircraft remained flyable during the rest of the mission. As the operation unfolded at the compound, our air and ground intelligence teams provided real-time updates to the ground force, ensuring those forces could safely navigate the complex environment without unnecessary risk. The force remained protected by overhead tactical aviation. Maduro and his wife, both indicted, gave up and were taken into custody by the Department of Justice, assisted by our incredible U.S. military with professionalism and precision, with no loss of U.S. life. After securing the indicted persons, the force began to prep for departure. Helicopters were called in to exfiltrate the extraction force, while fighter aircraft and remotely piloted aircraft provided overhead coverage and suppressive fire. There were multiple self-defense engagements as the force began to withdraw out of Venezuela. The force successfully exfiltrated and returned to their afloat launch bases, and the force was over the water at 3:29 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with indicted persons on board. And both Maduro and his wife were embarked aboard the USS Iwo Jima. In closing, what we've witnessed today is a powerful demonstration of America's joint force. We think, we develop, we train, we rehearse, we debrief, we rehearse again and again, not to get it right, but to ensure that we cannot get it wrong. Our jobs are to integrate combat power so when the order comes, we can deliver overwhelming force at the time and the place of our choosing against any foe anywhere in the world. I am immensely proud today of our joint force and filled with gratitude to represent them here today. There is simply no mission too difficult for these incredible professionals and the families that stand by them and support them. As we stand here this morning, our forces remain in the region at a high state of readiness, prepared to project power, defend themselves, and our interests in the region. This operation is a testament to the dedication and unwavering commitment to justice and our resolve to hold accountable those who threaten peace and stability. In closing, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to the brave men and women who executed this mission. Their courage and tireless commitment to our nation are what makes us strong. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you, Mr. President.
Well, I don't have much to add to what you've heard now, other than the following points. Nicolas Maduro was indicted in 2020 in the United States. He is not the legitimate president of Venezuela. That's not just us saying it. The first Trump administration, the Biden administration, the second Trump administration, none of those three recognized him. He's not recognized by the European Union and multiple countries around the world. He is a fugitive of American justice with a $50 million reward, which I guess we saved $50 million. And
make sure.
Yeah, exactly. But
don't let anybody claim it. Nobody deserves it but us.
But I want to be clear about one thing. Nicolas Maduro had multiple opportunities to avoid this. He was provided multiple very, very, very generous offers and chose instead to act like a wild man, chose instead to play around. And the result is what we saw tonight. The other message here is the following. You have a guy, like many people around the world, they like to play games. You have a guy who decides he's going to invite Iran into his country, is going to, do the confiscation of American oil companies, is going to flood our country with gang members, is going to take Americans prisoner and try to hold them for hostage and trade them like he was able to do with the Biden administration. Basically likes to play games all this time and thinks nothing's going to happen. And I hope what people now understand is that we have a president. The 47th president of the United States is not a game player. When he tells you that he's going to do something, when tells you he's going to address a problem, he means it. He actions it. I can tell you, I've watched this process now for 14, 15 years, been around it. Everybody talks, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. When I get there, we're going to do this, we're going to take... This is a president of action. Like, I don't understand yet how they haven't figured this out. And now, if you don't know, now you know. Because this is the way it's going to play out. And I think people need to understand that this is not a president that just talks and does letters and press conferences. And, if he says he's serious about something, he means it. And this is something that was a direct threat to the national interest of the United States, and the president addressed it. This is a president of peace, by the way. I told you what I just said earlier. This guy had multiple opportunities to find his way somewhere else and figure out another. He could have been living somewhere else right now, very happy, but instead he wanted to play big boy. And so now, he's got other sets of problems on his hands. And but I think that the message here should be for the world. Look, the president doesn't go out looking for people to pick fights with. He's not generally wants to get along with everybody. We'll talk and meet with anybody, but don't play games. Don't play games with this president's in office, because it's not going to turn out well. And so I hope that I guess that lesson was learned last night, and we hope it'll be instructive moving forward.
Is that a message for Cuba? Mr. President.
Mr. You said that the U.S. is going to run Venezuela, so who's in power right now?
Well, we're going to be running it with a group, and we're going to make sure it's run properly. We're going to rebuild the oil infrastructure, which will cost billions of dollars. It'll be paid for by the oil companies directly. They will be reimbursed for what they're doing, but that's going to be paid. And we're going to get the oil flowing the way it should be. As you know, it was just a minor flow. It was actually a minor flow for what they have. But we're going to run it properly. We're going to make sure the people of Venezuela are taken care of. We're going to make sure the people that were forced out of Venezuela by this thug are also taken care of.
Mr. President, does the U.S. running the country mean that U.S. troops will be on the ground? How will that work?
Well, they always say boots on the ground. So
wanted to break away from what you're talking about real quick and go into this this guy that was in the same facility that I was in downtown Chicago, pertaining to the trials of drug crimes. I'm sitting here looking at these events. That's just absolutely remarkable in how corrupt and how powerful that these people have become. Who's richer than Pablo and Chapo? Escortes over in Colombia, drug lord, influences his wealth, etc. And let's go right over here. Let's look at this right here. Chicago's most wanted criminal lives 2,000 miles away in Mexico. Let's go to this one right here.
The feds say he's a fugitive and a member. The The feds say he's a fugitive and a member of the Mexican cartel gang CJNG, known as New Generation. The I-team was with agents from Immigrations and Customs Enforcement this morning here in Chicago as they arrested a man known as El Trace P. Tonight, he's in ICE custody, part of increased removal enforcement. It's pitch dark when federal agents huddle in a Northwest Side parking lot Wednesday morning.
Still going for our target today.
For the last-minute run-through of a carefully orchestrated, targeted immigration arrest they were about to execute.
Wanted for a prison sentence in Mexico involving some kidnapping.
I-team cameras are rolling on an exclusive ride-along with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Operations like these, ICE says, happen multiple times a day across the Chicago area. When we pull up on a residential street, armed agents blocked by protective shields and long rifles drawn surround a minivan. It's the so-called target's brother, an undocumented Mexican national, that's pulled from the van and handcuffed. It's what's known as a collateral arrest. We've blurred the brother's face because he's not been charged with a crime. This is the man agents came for, Jose Antonio Reyes Mundo, as his name reads on the federal arrest warrant, a member of the CJNG cartel, according to ICE. Sam Olson, the director of Chicago's ICE office, was in the field for this one.
In this case, it was readily apparent that we needed to because he was, had a very dangerous history.
That's why Olson says a Customs and Border Patrol chopper hovered high overhead, and agents came with a full squad from multiple agencies.
Because of his significant criminal history, he rose to a level where we kind of brought even our tactical teams out there. I think it's better that when we have more people out arresting, it's safer for us, and it can also be safer for the aliens that we're going after.
Agents deliver Reyes Mundo and his brother to this booking center in Broadview. There, the men are stripped of their belongings and registered into the system. ICE describes Reyes Mundo as a 31-year-old known as El Trace P.
Somebody who we suspect to be part of a cartel in Mexico that had a conviction for kidnapping and homicide.
Olson says it was the U.S. Marshals Service that flagged Reyes Mundo's presence in Chicago.
We brought together kind of a collaboration of these agencies to unify together and focus on an actual immigration enforcement mission.
So what is your mandate from the White House since January 20th?
Sure, I think it's to go out and, get the worst first.
Now, ICE says Reyes Mundo will be placed before an immigration judge for removal proceedings. Do you think that neighborhood that he lived in is now safer tonight because he's in your custody?
I would say so. Someone with a criminal history in the past that has a conviction for kidnapping and homicide, for sure.
The I-team could not find a criminal record for Reyes Mundo in the U.S. ICE says he is in the country illegally, but they are not sure how long he has been here.
Wow, that ICE agent mentioned it, but what a show of force that was.
Yeah, at least 15 agents out there from multiple agencies.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to one other thing right here.
A member of the Mexican cartel.
Hold up. Let's go. That was April 30th, 2025. ABC said in Chicago News. Let's go. Right here.
El Mencho tonight is a $15 million man. That is the U.S. government reward just increased head of Ruben Oseguera Cervantes, alien. Such a huge bounty on such a physically insignificant man shows the intensity behind a fugitive manhunt for Chicago's public enemy number one.
He's a person that we would consider as public enemy number one.
More than 6 years ago, the newly installed head of the Drug Enforcement Administration in Chicago made a startling revelation to the I-team. A little-known Mexican drug lord named El Mencho was to be considered the city's most wanted fugitive and public enemy number one, on a par with the most feared Chicago enemy from an earlier century, Al Capone.
He's a very powerful trafficker in Mexico, and he has cells all over the world.
The file on El Mencho bulging in recent years as his new generation cartel seized control of Chicago's street drug sales, and with the territory came wholesale bloodshed here and there. Mencho facing federal indictments in Chicago and other U.S. cities, still on the lam in Mexico, and still overseeing a multi-billion-dollar empire. Tonight, this symbol of his global drug conglomerate, the $10 million reward for El Mencho's arrest, has just been increased to $15 million. The hike in America's bounty for El Mencho comes as his family starts to unravel. Relatives close to him arrested and squeezed by investigators as the government tries to press for information that could lead to his arrest and the takedown of his bloodthirsty and heavily armed cartel army. As the I-Team first reported 2 weeks ago, El Mencho's son-in-law, Christian Fernando Gutierrez Ochoa, was arrested on drug trafficking and money laundering offenses in Southern California. Ochoa had been living under a fake name in this luxury section here in Riverside after fleeing Mexico, according to prosecutors. Mencho had helped Ochoa fake his own death, even claiming to have murdered him, so the son-in-law and his daughter could live outside the dangerous cartel world. New details tonight from the arrest of El Mencho's kin in California. Federal agents now say they found numerous fake identities at the time of the arrest, along with ghost guns, those homemade weapons with no serial number but just as deadly as something off a store shelf. And tonight, Mencho's son-in-law headed to Washington, D.C. for prosecution. All of these moves by the feds aimed at public enemy number one himself, whom authorities say is personally responsible for the ongoing carnage in Mexico and hundreds of deaths. It's an ongoing problem.
It is an ongoing problem. It's awful in what's happening to us right now. We're under some sort of an invasion infliction pertaining to all these drugs that's invaded our communities and made our streets so unsafe. So I commend Donald J. Trump in taking down, I guess the FBI needs to change their most wanted to this guy right here. That was kind of discreet in one way, but I'm glad that now we got a president that'll stand up to this type of wickedness. It goes beyond corruption. This is wickedness.
For another year that we would be exactly where Venezuela was in terms. I used to say, if they win, we're going to be Venezuela on steroids, and that's what would have happened.
President, thank you. Are you saying that Secretary Hegseth and Rubio are going to be running Venezuela, and will you be sending in U.S. military troops to provide?
Team that's working with the people of Venezuela to make sure that we have Venezuela right. Because for us to just leave, who's going to take over? I mean, there is nobody to take over. You have a vice president who's been appointed by Maduro. And right now she's the vice president, and she's, I guess, the president. She was sworn as president just a little while ago. She had a long conversation with Marco, and she said, we'll do whatever you need. I think she was quite gracious, but she really doesn't have a choice. We're going to have this done right. We're not going to just do this with Maduro, then leave like everybody else, leave and say, let it go to hell. If we just left, it has zero chance of ever coming back. We'll run it properly. We'll run it professionally. We'll have the greatest oil companies in the world go in and invest billions and billions of dollars and take out money, use that money in Venezuela. And the biggest beneficiary are going to be the people of Venezuela. And also, I can't stress this strongly enough, the people that got thrown out of Venezuela that are now in the United States, and frankly, some want to stay and some probably want to go back, yeah.
What's being done to protect Americans in the country, and were any of the detained Americans?
Well, right now they're very protected because nobody's going to mess with us. They're very protected. The people of, and we let them know that you better not touch one of them.
Are you concerned that bad elements of the Maduro regime will remain in place?
Well, we know who they are. We're on them, and they're acting much differently now than they would have acted 2 days ago. Okay, wait, behind you, please.
Mr. President, why is running a country in South America America first?
Well, I think it is because we want to surround ourselves with good neighbors. We want to surround ourselves with...
It's basically the same type of scenario that Benjamin Netanyahu, or however you pronounce his name, regarding over there in Israel, is doing pertaining to Hamas, that once more, sometimes good people has to use the same type of tactics or bad tactics in attacking these people that are doing this. And if the truth be known, there's probably gangs in Texas, gangs in California, gangs everywhere in America that need to be taken down, because we have seen how destructive that this has become, not only with the generation that's growing today, but in prior generations and previous generations that's going to have to go through the consequences because of people being messed up in their minds and people not being within their faculties of knowing right from wrong or good from bad. So we're finally starting to hammer or chisel our way possibly out of this humongous storm that various political previous politicians has put us in, that I personally believe ought to be held accountable for not so much what they done, but what they didn't do. Just like the governor and the mayor in the state of Illinois, the very state that I was born in, which we can't, help as infants where we was born at. But I think that any politician that is willing to bend the law in making these towns, these cities, these states sanctuaries for all these illegals to come to, I think we need to go after them. And it doesn't matter if it's judges, it doesn't matter if it's state or federal judges, it doesn't matter if it's mayors or governors or whoever, that once you've identified yourself in what side of the history that you're going to be on, well, then we need to clear them out. We need to get rid of them and get people in there that's for the better interest of the American people, for our safety and our well-being.
Coming out of the ground, we're going to get reimbursed for all of that. We're going to get reimbursed for everything that we spend. So it's going to be a very important. This is a very big evening that took place last night.
Yes, it is.
We have to be surrounded by safe, secure countries. And we also have to have energy. Very important. We have to have energy that's real energy, not where they're getting 4% and 5% of the energy out of the ground. You take a look. It was such a disaster. So what's going to happen with Venezuela, I think, over the next period of a year is going to be a great thing. And the people of Venezuela will be the biggest beneficiaries.
U.S. military.
Mr. President, thank you. What did you last speak to Maduro about when you spoke? And is the
Well, I don't want to get into the conversations, but I did have conversations with him, and I said, you got to surrender. And I actually thought he was pretty close to doing so, but now he wished he did, yeah.
You said that Maduro is responsible for drug trafficking. You recently pardoned the former president of Honduras, who was convicted for many drug trafficking. Can you explain how these two situations are different? Would you ever pardon Maduro?
I endorsed, as you know, the winning president, the man who won in Honduras. I endorsed the man who won in Chile. I endorsed the man who won in Argentina, and we are doing very well with that whole group. What the man that I pardoned was, if you could equate it to us, he was treated like the Biden administration treated a man named Trump. That didn't work out too well for them. This was a man who was persecuted very unfairly. He was the head of the country. He was persecuted very unfairly, and there are a number of them. And we felt that it was a very unfair situation that happened to him. He's also a party member of the man who won. So obviously the people liked what I did. And one of the reasons that was done is because of the fact that the party in power felt very strongly that that man was treated very badly. I studied it very quickly, and then I studied it in great detail. I went to a lot of the people standing behind me, and they felt that that man was persecuted and treated very badly. That's why I gave him a pardon.
You referenced boots on the ground earlier. Can you just sort of button this up? Do you envision the U.S. military having a presence in Venezuela as the U.S. runs that country?
Well, no, we're going to have a presence in Venezuela as it pertains to oil, because we have to have, we're sending our expertise in. So you may need something, not very much. But no, we're going to be taking out a tremendous amount of wealth out of the ground. And that wealth is going to the people of Venezuela and people from outside of Venezuela that used to be in Venezuela. And it goes also to the United States of America in the form of reimbursement for the damages caused us by that country. So I want to thank you all very much. Thank you. Do you have one? Yes, please. You were so nice before. I'm going to give you the final question. Go ahead.
you, Mr.
Unless it's a
President.
bad question, in
It's
which
about
case I'll go one word. It's about who?
It's about Putin, if you want.
About Putin. Well, it's always
You
nice
had
to
a
talk
phone.
about Putin.
You had a phone call with him on Monday. Did he talk at all about Maduro? Did y'all talk about this?
No, we didn't.
And
We
then-
never spoke about Maduro.
Are you mad at him right now? I mean, there's this
I'm not
intelligence.
thrilled with Putin. I'm not thrilled with Putin. He's killing too many people.
Was that
I
intelligence?
thought that would be so. I settled 8 1/4 war. You know what the 1/4 was? Thailand and Cambodia. I did it again. They broke out, and I did it in about 5 hours, and I settled it. I'm giving myself 1/4, so I'm up to now 8 1/4. In other words, I settled the war, but then they broke out. They had a pretty bad breakout over the last 4 days. I got them to go back to peace. So I only give 1/4. I thought the easiest one would be, one of the easier ones would be Russia, Ukraine. It's not. And they both have done some pretty bad things. And look, that's Biden's war. That's not my war. But I want to stop the lives. Did you see where last month, 30,000, it was 27,000 the month before. 30,000, mostly soldiers, were killed this last month. 30,000. I want to stop that. You know, I got NATO to pay 5% instead of the 2% that they weren't paying. They weren't paying 2, now they pay 5. And we send them a lot of munitions. We send them a lot of things, missiles and various other things, a lot. And they pay. The United States is not losing money. We're probably making money on that. It's the last thing I care about. I just want to stop all those people. We're losing 25, 30,000 human beings that come from 2 places that are very far away. But if I can stop, because it's something I've been pretty good at doing, deals, I guess. It's all a deal. Life is a big deal. But if I can stop that war and stop 30,000 young people, in addition to the fact that people are being killed in Kiev, people are being killed in other cities throughout, a much smaller number, but they're being killed, viciously killed. So I'm not happy about it. I thought that would be something that would get solved. We have Mr. Witkoff here. I think that we're making progress, but that's a war that should have never happened. If I were president, it would have never happened. Putin says it. Everybody says it. If I were president, that would have never happened. But I inherited that war. That was Joe Biden, Zelensky, and Putin.
Exactly.
I came into the situation, and it's a mess. And I will say this. I watched an operation last night that was so precise. That was so brilliant. I mean, it was incredible. If we had our people, like this general and our people involved, that war would not have gone on very long, that I can tell you. That war, to use an old term, that war has become a bloodbath, and we want it to get stopped. Thank you very much.
It's become a genocide. Nothing but a genocide. That's awful. Absolutely awful. Like you said, 30,000 troops died just in 1 month. 27 the month before. That's awful.
Maduro and his wife, we can report that they are expected to land in an upstate New York airport. It's going to be Stewart International Airport in Orange County, New York, this afternoon to face charges. I want to bring back David Rhodes with me and former ambassador to Venezuela for the Venezuela Affairs Unit, James Story. If you can weave your way through that, Ambassador, there was a lot of news in there. I want to tell you a couple things that President Trump said. We're going to stay until such time that a proper transition has taken place. We're going to run the place. That's a big development. We're going to run the place. What did you take from that?
Well, yeah, he said it multiple times. And, it appeared that he pointed over to Secretary Rubio and Pete Hegseth when he said it. And what really struck me, what jumped out at me, the fact that Secretary Rubio has been speaking with Delcy Rodriguez, who is now the president of Venezuela. We're going to work with her. She's been very gracious and rather dismissive of Maria Corina Machado and the fact that Edmundo Gonzalez won an election last year. And I think this is going to require a lot of unpacking on exactly how we intend to, quote, run the place. And certainly, I'll say right here, I stand corrected. It's very much about oil. I think he spent a significant amount of time talking about natural resources. So, for me, it was about democracy and stability and regional and hemispheric stability, and suddenly it's turned into quite clearly an oil play and willing to work with some pretty bad actors who remain on the ground, including Delcy Rodriguez.
He made both those points. We're going to run the place and the oil point. In fact, David, it was kind of remarkable because this is a script out of Iraq that this is going to pay for itself. We're going to take the oil that was taken from us. He talked about how they can, refineries in Venezuela are operating at very low capacity, which is true. He said, we're going to go in there. We're going to basically fix it. We're going to get a lot more oil, and then we're going to sell that oil. And it sounds.
It needs to be fixed. They got some of the most dirtiest gasoline in the world. Some of the most dirtiest diesel and gasoline because the refineries over there ain't up to snuff when it comes to basically EPA standards.
I heard it once or twice, the words election or the words democracy. And as the ambassador said, the president of the United States is just dismissing the leader of the opposition, the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, as she's not a strong enough leader. They haven't even spoken to her. Edmundo Gonzalez, who won the election last year, is also being ignored by the United States. It's a stunning development with no explanation of how Venezuela is going to be run. It's almost a modern version of gunboat diplomacy, but via drones and helicopters and fighter jets, that there's no U.S. troops on the ground, but the United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio, the gentleman standing behind him, the CIA director, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff,
They must not have understood what the president was saying pertaining to those oil rigs that legally was ours. They must not understand pertaining to all the drug activity that's destroying lives, precious lives over here in America. I've never seen the media so, I guess the right word would be cocky. Just absolutely just snub-nosy to the degree that they're willing to ask and do and say the things that they're talking about.
We're going to be welcomed with open arms. And history shows that just is not the case when you look at Libya and Iraq as some examples of the past. And so absolutely, if we are going to so-called run this country, I mean, what does that mean for U.S. Boots on the ground? Are we running their courts? Are we overseeing their election procedures and system? Are we the law enforcement? How do we embed with local law enforcement on the ground? I think what this press conference did was raise so many more questions than it did give answers. And frankly, if I'm a member of Congress on either side of the party, I am alarmed. I am calling the White House, asking for more details. I'm going to ask for hearings, both closed and open. The American people deserve accountability and answers. And I think lastly, what I'll say here is what is so remarkable about this press conference is that Donald Trump basically ran on the exact opposite of what he said, that we're going to extract ourselves from these endless wars. And what you saw today is pretty much flies in the face of what he ran on in 2024. So I'm interested to see how his base responds.
Once more, sometimes good people has to do bad things or has to use the same type of tactics that they're using on us. If not, you'll be run over and you won't have a snowball chance, however that saying goes.
U.S. is going to be getting a lot of money from that oil industry taking charge. He was suggesting repeatedly that the Venezuelan government of Nicolas Maduro had stolen the U.S. involvement in the oil. Take that money.
They did.
He wants that money for the United States because Venezuela does export a lot of oil right now. And that jumped out at me that one of the main reasons that he wants U.S. boots on the ground is to take charge of Venezuela's oil industry.
Yeah, and we know that this has been kind of a fixation of the president throughout this entire pressure campaign. His mind has been, of course, on the drugs and the migrants, but it has been almost single-handedly focused on the oil, and we've heard that from officials behind the scenes.
If Donald Trump did not do what he done regarding the Panama Canal, to this day, right now, they would be running unfair trading, commercialized trading through the Panama Canal towards basically allowing for ships like China and other ships to get in front of our ships, and we would still be paying 3 to 4 times more to get through the Panama Canal, even though we was the one that sacrificed all the men and paid for it with sweat, blood, and tears. I don't know how many people died building the Panama Canal of diseases and mosquito bites and some of the most ravaged areas pertaining to snakes and alligators and etc. If Donald Trump did not put his foot down in reclaiming the Panama Canal that basically the Carter administration let sift through their fingers, we would be, sure enough, in behind the 8 ball. Sometimes you have to nip things in the bud. And obviously the prior presidential administrations has not been willing to go out of their way in doing that, regardless whether it was here on the home front or it was abroad. Whenever you make a sworn oath to the Constitution of the United States, you're making an oath to protect the sovereignty of our great nation, not only regarding our homeland, of the things that goes on in our homeland, but you're swearing to also do so internationally as well as domestically. And for people to criticize what just happened, it's appalling to me. It's appalling to me that people don't have enough insight to understand that in order to rid the snake, you must first cut off its head. Once you get to the head, then you can chop the rest of him up in little bitty pieces. But until you go after the main honcho, are those that's causing such inflictions upon to the American people, you're basically going to be just like a dog chasing after its tail. You're going to be going somewhere, but you're not going to be getting nowhere. You're going to be going around and around in circles, but you're not going to be going nowhere. Ain't that something? How a dog chases after his tail? Just go around and around and around and around in circles till he gets so tired he can't no longer do it. Or he gets dizzy. Maybe his blood starts flowing to his head too hard. I don't know. But what purpose of it is towards him running around and around in circles other than him having fun or maybe getting a little bit of exercise? Well, I've seen our administrations for the past 30 plus years do just exactly that. Some of them talked a good talk about going to war against the drugs, but then we would see the consequences arise pertaining to what they didn't do. It's one thing to say you're going to do it, and it's another thing to actually do it.
About how to approach this. The fact that the president said that they are not in contact with her. One reporter actually asked, do you even know where she is? Because she's not inside the country, inside Venezuela right now. He didn't answer that part of the question, but that to me was shocking.
He didn't even want her to come back.
He said that he was not in contact with her. That to me was one of the most shocking parts of that.
And that instead, it appears Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, has actually talked to the current vice president, who has been sworn in as the leader of Venezuela right now. So again, that suggests that they've made a deal with other people to be the interim government of Venezuela, which is a remarkable turn for the U.S. government, which
that ain't what they said. That ain't what they said.
Machado as the
they
person.
said that they was going to govern the situation over there to make sure that one administration did not excel the other administration towards being just as corrupt as what the first administration was. That's all they're going to do. They're going to micromanage it. Same way with the oil department. They're going to micromanage pertaining to making sure that those refineries are up to date and that they're producing what they're supposed to be producing in the way that they're supposed to be producing it in. And in the meantime, we will get a certain amount of money back because of the pain and suffering that has occurred pertaining to their I go beyond corruption. They're wicked. evil, demonic ways towards wanting to basically crucify or destroy the very people that helped put them on the map to begin with. Talk about a slap in the face. Talk about biting the hand that was feeding you. You can't get no better example than that. Hey, in the meantime, in the year 2026, just want to say thank you for listening to my viewers, and take another little open shot here pertaining to our achieving forces out here that's been adequate in doing what they're doing as far as land conservation and etc. Just want to say thank you to all my viewers, and appreciate your prayers in the year 2025. A lot of us went through a lot of hardships, including myself, pertaining to me losing my son, Nicholas James Jackson, at the age of 46. But we just pray that that the administration that's in power right now is on the right side of history, and that we will continue to strive in leaps and bounds towards succeeding, even as the Bible talks about, for I have not found thy works perfect yet, to go back and to do thy first works over again. Now, this isn't just on a personal level. This is also on an economical level. This is on a political level. And it's on every other kind of level that you can think of, towards the Father stating the fact in the first part of Revelations to go back, to go back, to go back. I've not found thy works perfect yet, to go back and to do them over again. I know people don't like to be called down on what that they didn't do that they should have done, but to me it's the right, proper thing to do whenever it comes to positive criticism. They just like these people across the road right here doing land conservation pertaining to soil erosion. They're doing the proper and right thing, and to me they're doing an excellent job out here in improving not only what's going on today in our present generation, but doing the proper and right thing in preserving the ground and the property for 50, 100, 150 years from now. They're investing money here, but what they're investing in is going to make money in, looking at it from long term. And that's exactly what we need. That's exactly how we're going to have to look at the problems at bay, regardless whether it be politically, economically, socially, spiritually, or any other way. That's exactly how we're going to have to look at things if we're going to succeed in going forward as a true Christian, God-fearing nation. Thanks again. Good luck to all of us. God bless America, and God bless our troops, and which way we go from this moment on in our endeavors going forward. And shalom. Get down. Get down. What are you doing? Jumping all over me. I don't want to play like that right now. No. No, Jack, no. No, Jack. No. 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 Don't do it, Jackie. Don't do it.